pledge allegiance to the States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Tom.
You get volunteer hours for that one, Tom. Won't do you any good, but we'll offer them up.
Will I be able to graduate?
Sure. From our imaginary school, no problem.
No problem. Okay, we'll move along to approval of the agenda, which would include the consent items. So may I have a motion and a second, and then we'll find out if we're moving some consent items off. A motion, please, to approve the agenda. So moved. Thank you.
Second.
Thank you.
Director Salmon?
Aye.
Director DeVito?
Aye.
Director Acosta?
Aye.
Director Garceco?
Aye.
Director Jeffries?
Okay, we will backtrack a little bit. Is there any board member who wants to remove an item from the consent calendar?
I'd be happy to remove the finance committee.
Report the financial report?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if we could call up the financial report, and Howard will help us understand some of the, I guess it's March, right? The March figures?
Okay, hold on.
Yeah, March.
So do you want to go through that reporting first, or you just want to pull it, accept the agenda with that pulled out?
Well, we already accepted the agenda. It got ahead of me a little bit. We approved the agenda.
Okay, we didn't actually have your vote on, we didn't actually have her vote on that before we jumped to Howard pulling the consent out.
Didn't you not just do the roll call for the approval of the agenda?
We did.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought we did.
Oh,
Yes.
forgive me if I pulled that out.
Okay. But we are going to have Howard walk us through some of the financials so the public has access to it. Where would you like the agenda page to be?
It would be page 1 of the finance committee
There it is.
meeting.
Okay.
Treasurer's report?
Got it. All right. I will be brief and you all have the opportunity to take a look at this. On our balance sheet, we have total assets, $13,468,790. Got lots of total assets. They're comprised primarily of our current assets, our fixed assets of the building and the land. Our liabilities are only $118,268, which gives us an equity of $13,350,551. In March, our total income was $837,446, which is property tax and rental income. And I'd like to just note that we don't get 12 months of $800,000. We get that when the property tax is collected and our portion is sent to us. So many of the months, it looks pretty dreary, but this month looks good. Our monthly expenses in March were $150,622. And that includes our community health contracts, payroll, office operations, legal and accounting services, and our direct care services, which are growing. So our net income, because of that big $800,000 hit in March, but our net income was $736,216 for March. And I think the last thing that I'll mention is that our community development disbursements were through July to March, last July to March, amounted to $747,907. And these were primarily improvements to this building and also significant improvements to the wellness center. So these, of course, were for architectural, planning services, engineering, and construction costs. And with that, that is my report for March.
Thank you, Howard, and I will note, I jumped the gun on it. I should have had you talk on E, but I'm passing it on and I'll do better next time.
That's okay.
Thank you so much, staff. Sorry to surprise you. What's she doing now?
I'm very flexible.
Yes, thank you, Howard, for the highlights, the big picture items there. Moving to C, public comments. Do we have any cards or people in the Zoom room?
No parts.
Okay, very good. And now we're going to be delighted with a chair yoga report about our first year. And I want to thank you, Bianca, for you and others that were involved. You did a great job of deciding what data to look like and help us understand the impact. And for taxpayers, that's so important for us to be able to say this mattered and it mattered for these reasons and this is who it mattered to. So take it away.
Well, I was just going to start off by thanking our board for inviting me to provide this report and also our staff for entrusting me to provide this report while Teresa Drosatano is away in Africa. So, but Teresa and I work very closely together. And so she's my right hand and I'm her left hand. So I'm hoping to provide a good report to you. As Director Jeffries mentioned, we're coming on to a year already of our chair yoga program. And I cannot believe it's already a year, but here we go. I do want to inform our board, this has been a very, very successful program, not just simply by the feedback that we receive from our community members, but also through the actual data. In the report that was provided to you, you have in there some actual testimonials that have been provided by participants in the chair yoga program. I'm inviting you, please read over those testimonials and you can see how impactful this program is. But if we were to get into the brass tacks of things, some notes to make. To date, we have had 55 individuals participate in the program over this past year. In addition, this class is provided 2 times a week. So we do it on Tuesdays and we do it on Fridays. And this class has there's 10 sessions in total. And the way that we distinguish this program differently than, say, a traditional yoga program, we provide physical assessments in the beginning of the program, and we also provide physical assessments at the end of the program. We do that so that the participants can see independently the range of motion improvement, then they can reflect on their balance. And we provided all of you also kind of like the feedback that we received. We provide you the feedback we received from those assessments. And then we also provide participants who have gone through a whole session with a survey where they can reflect on their actual physical improvements. Some things to note, as if on the scale that we're using now, we use a 0 to 5 scale, 5 being the greatest improvement. Some things to note of all the participants that we have surveyed we have a 4.19 average of people experiencing physical improvement. We have a 4.16. Remember, it's a 0 to 5, 4.16 and flexibility improvement. Balance improvement is coming in at 4.03. Strength has increased as well as joint and pain relief. And also something that is often overlooked in physical exercise is kind of mental health and stress reduction. And we're seeing an improvement of 4.47 on that. A lot of our program, new participants are coming by way of people verbally encouraging their friends or family members to attend. And also on top of that, as our board knows, I'm involved in a number of our different programs as a program coordinator. Personally, I've had participants come to me and say, when I first started the chair yoga class, I didn't notice any improvement, but I did notice something. Whereas I would have a challenge before the program, simply reaching up into my cabinet to grab a cup for water. all of a sudden I can easily grab something, or I fell on my knees and now I'm able to pick myself up. So there are some really beautiful experiences that our participants have that are showing the effects of our chair yoga program. So I just want to thank our board for supporting this program. We have some really amazing feedback around our instructor, Leslie Salmon, her professionalism and her ability to really provide personalized work with all the students that are in each class. The average class attendees per class is coming in about 16. Our agreement is 25. We do have a number of people that are registered for each series, but the class average is 16. So we haven't exceeded our agreements or anything like that. But overall, the class has been very, very successful. In the report that you've been provided, we have all the data, all of that you can take a look at. Yeah, that's basically
Wonderful.
it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Mhm.
Would there be any directors who would like to ask some questions or make observations?
Would you like to just explain the score again, like what that means?
Yeah. So when we first started the program, and mind you, my background is in EMS. So I was in creating this program, I was kind of doing a more like medical assessment. The numbers and the actual efficacy of the program was a lot more, it could be honed in and more directed at actual physical, well-being. So if you were to look at what we do now in a survey, we have the Cal State San Marcos School of Nursing. They bring their nurses to come and we create stations. So our first station that we have is we take a look at blood pressure, weight, we look at heart rate. The second station that we have, we do upper extremities, looking at range of motion. So we'll look at abduction, adduction, range of motion in the upper extremities. And then our next station, we look at lumbar and we look at like hinge and range of motion as it pertains to the hips. And then our last station, we're looking at the lower extremities. We do this because each time we come and do a physical assessment, we're able to look back at the previous record and be like, oh, look, your range of motion in your left shoulder has increased from like 9 o'clock all the way to 11 o'clock. And we leverage that physical assessment to provide feedback on the improvement that the participants are experiencing. And so we do, as I mentioned earlier, we do the physical assessment at the beginning of the series and at the end of the 10 weeks. And we're very fortunate to have San Marcos School of Nursing to come and provide us at least like 9 student nurses that will also provide assistance to us as we're doing the physical assessments.
And may I piggyback, Sally? And so when we look at these scores, these are scores that at a 5-point scale, that at the end of a session that overall physical improvement got an average of 4.19, saying yay-hoo, right?
Yes.
Okay, and on down the list. This isn't a pre and post, this is an end of.
The numbers that I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
The numbers that you see there are on personal surveys that we have provided to people that have gone through the program through at least a series. The data sheet, you have a data, sheet that goes through the actual physical assessments. And those are a little bit more bogged down than say an average participant would be interested in, but they're actually really great data points for us as a health district to have.
Yes. I appreciated that detail. Did that help, Sally?
I think so,
Okay.
yeah, and I like that the student nurses are taking part in that. It's kind of a win-win.
Oh,
It is.
absolutely.
Yeah. They've been so consistent with us for years,
Mhm.
and it's such a great collaboration. And I will every once in a while run into the nursing program director at CSUSM. She says, they're going to Fallbrook again. I go, yay. I love
Yeah.
that. I love that.
Absolutely.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, any other comments or recommendations or any such things? Okay, Thank you, Bianca. And please thank the team
Absolutely, will
on
do.
our behalf. Yes. Okay, acknowledging that we have had we've had an oral report on finance. May I have a motion to approve the consent items?
So moved.
And a second, please?
Second.
Director Solomon,
Aye.
Director DeVito. Aye. Director Acosta. Aye. Director Canseco. Aye. Director Jeffries.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if you can believe it, we're getting our first peek at the 25-26 proposed budget. And I want to thank Howard for working with Rachel and the finance team to put this together. I believe for our public, you have some documents back there, and all of my board colleagues, this is our hymnal right now. We're going to sing from this hymnal. Rachel, would you like to walk us through?
Sure. You'll also find myriad of papers and such somewhere. The narrative that was provided. Yeah, it's the one picture. The one. Yeah. We provide the budget in a monthly format as well as the overall. Generally, we skip to the proposed overall. The monthly is in there just so that you can see the building pieces. For the proposed budget, nothing substantially unusual compared to previous years. There are a few areas of growth that I'll point out, Howard, before I'll jump to your comments if you're good with that.
Sure.
You'll see a little bit larger growth in, not to pick on you, Alex, but legal's the first one in the column. And that's obviously because we have a different contractual relationship. We also are utilizing Alex a lot more than we were previous legal. So this is an expectation of what legal costs should have always
Can you
been.
give us a line number?
Oh, sorry. This would be line number 45.
Yes.
So you'll see a jump there. While the jump looks gigantic, the dollar amount actually is not. If you look at line item 35, you'll also see a tremendous growth in health services and clinics. Again, the district is anticipating partnering with a clinical provider to bring advanced clinical services to the community.
That line number again, please.
Is 35.
Thank you.
And that shows a 1,364% increase over last year's budget. That's primarily a placeholder value of about $500,000, presuming that we're able to come into that partnership with clinical services. That is a placeholder dollar. We are not aware of what that final negotiation could look like, but we wanted to definitely get it budgeted so that there was community awareness as well as the board's knowledge about what that could potentially bring to the community. Trying to think of where the other large jumps. Those are the two really that are larger. If you go down to Community Health and Wellness Center, line number 89, software and website. You'll also see under software and website in admin, we show a negative where Wellness Center shows a large growth. Part of that is we're splitting the cost on some of those subscriptions more fully this time. We also have an opportunity through Streamline, which is our website provider, to offer some more advanced services, which will allow our website to have better usability, which we need with the amount of traffic that we're seeing coming through for Wellness Center calendars and different pieces. So while that looks like a large jump, again, it's not financially a very big hit. Probably the largest part to talk about is in the proposed budget, the final line item under net ordinary income, you'll show that I am forecasting a negative value of $128,000. While that is not common practice for the district, and it is an unusual situation, It is primarily in response to the district direct care service at that $500,000 mark. So should we not come into contract with that and not start funding it in July, which at this point seems to be the case, we'll still probably end up in a positive for the year. But some discussion around staff and such, we felt it was important to build that out so that we could start to see the reality of what that cost would bring to the community. If we were to run $128,000 in the negative this year, we have the ability within reserves to more than cover it. But it is an important piece to talk about as we talk about grant funding in the future, staffing allocations, all the different growth pieces. It's important to see what that cost looks like at the end of the year as well.
Thank you. Howard, what would you like us to know about the 25, 26?
Guess what? The things that I noted were an awful lot similar to what Rachel just said. So, I'll note about the property tax revenue. In the past, because of COVID and because of some other things, we conservatively projected our income to be 5%. Well, COVID's no longer, and all these new properties and houses have been in place. So the projected revenue for property tax this year is 8% versus 5% we've done over the past several years.
And that would be line 2, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Noted that the $500,000 placeholder, that's a big deal. And if we were able to bring the kinds of specialties and services into this community, it would be money well spent. So I hope that by the end of the year, we will have spent a majority of that having new services in the community. With respect to the salaries and taxes, and maybe then Jennifer, you could note the line.
Oh, what line is that?
Is we don't project the need for any additional staff.
Right.
And there will be a 5% increase in health insurance costs. Surprise, surprise, huh? And
Line 60.
Yeah, when you roll the overall number Howard is reporting includes both line 60, which is for the admin, as well as payroll salaries 94 for the wellness center. So we had to do some additive into the assumptions that Howard is discussing.
Gotcha.
Our community health and wellness center, which of course Bianca talked about one of the programs, we have many, and we hope that we'll have more. And so we budgeted 16% higher than last year for those new services. And the fiscal impact is a proposed loss of $128,000, which Rachel talked about in great detail. But we believe that that's warranted given the potential of being able to bring in these additional services. So the Finance Committee looked at all of these things last month, and Sally and I are recommending that the board approve this budget.
Sally,
Any questions?
As a member of the committee, do you have anything you'd like to add before we go to discussion?
Nope, covered everything. Yeah.
Rachel, anything else you feel you want to add before we go to discussion?
One small difference, really more of an accounting difference. I had a fairly long conversation for Sue and I. In this budget on line 3, you'll notice that interest and dividends for the proposed budget, we don't have a value in there. In previous years, we've had values. We typically do not realize the gains from those investments and pull those dollars into the operating budget. Right. So it has sort of misrepresented the total value at the end of the year. in the operating budget. Of course, it's represented in the balance sheet, of course, you'll see it in the P&L. But by putting it into the operating budget, it always looked like we had those funds and we're spending those funds. We have not, they have stayed in the investment account. So this year, it didn't make sense to include it in the operating budget, which is why you see a zero value there. So that is a correction, I believe. It doesn't change our overall financial statement at the end of the year. It's just truly not operating revenue.
I think that's prudent not to have it in the proposed budget and have it safely sequestered in our investment. Do you have any questions or observations?
No question. I know you guys mentioned about the reserve. How much is there, or is that something that keeping track of it, just because I know we have the placeholder, it will be.
Yes, so we don't budget the reserves,
Okay.
but we do have reserves policies, specifically for operations. Currently, I believe the operation reserve is still sitting at a 12-month. So that would mean that if for one full year, we received no income, we would still be able to meet the obligations of the district. It's highly unlikely, and I believe we were in the process of shifting that reserve policy, but we have not finalized that, and we'll probably move it down to something that's more consistent with other districts. 12 months was extreme, but we were building that policy during COVID when we were having a lot of instability. So that reserve policy, that's what those investment accounts are holding. And I forget the exact dollar amount of it in that reserve policy. So we can bring that forward. And you'll probably see it soon because we're going to amend it.
Okay. My only comment would be, I appreciate the allocation of the 500,000 for these direct care visions that we have to get those kinds of specialists into our community. And I am comfortable, since it probably won't be July, August, September, that when we look at line 104 at the end of the day, we'll be in the positive. I have no qualms about that. And if we get lucky and we get gastro and orthopedic and all those kinds of things, that's why we have our investment fund. We go in there and say, this is for the community. So I'm comfortable with proposed budget for 25-26 that shows that strategy. It's a strategy. May I ask for a motion to approve the 25-26 budget as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Howard. Second? Thank you, Sally. Roll call?
Director Jeffries.
Aye.
Director Canseco. Aye. Director Acosta. Aye. Director DeVito.
Aye.
Director Simon.
Aye.
Thank you.
Unanimous vote. Thank you very much to the finance team for all the thinking and the finance committee for putting that together for us. Moving to F2, I believe we might be getting instructed on the uniform public instruction cost accounting procedures. How fascinating. Alex, take the wheel.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we don't have putting out the PowerPoint.
This will be a Professor G,
Yes.
as he's known around here.
So I'm gonna actually use this whiteboard and the presentation, because this is actually a pretty complex subject, and stop me if I lose you. So when the presentation is up,
Alex,
yes,
could you
ma'am.
give us an on-ramp? Why should we know this as a board?
So let me start with this. Every agency has a purchasing policy. Your purchasing policy should cover two things: goods and services, specifically contracts for goods and services. Now, your purchasing policy is pretty bare when you compare it to other public agencies. And I'll note there are different types of service contracts, and they matter, and I'll explain why. So the first one we're gonna talk about is I'm calling on public works. These are like your traditional street improvements, stuff like that, construction. What the state law calls professional services. Those are your like engineers. It's a very specialized group, architects, engineers. They have special rules for them under state law. Then we call them special services. Those are your lawyers, your accountants. And then you have your maintenance contracts. That's like landscaping, painting your building, stuff like that. So hopping into this, I'll come back to this one in a sec. But your existing purchasing policy has a threshold for CEO approval. Every purchasing policy has to indicate how much your top executive can, up to what they're authorized to spend. Yours says 10,000, which is it's relatively low, and that's 10,000 for goods or services. No threshold for informal or formal bidding. I'll get into what that means. But that applies to these public works, not to the rest. And there's no, it doesn't make any distinction between these different types of contracts. And those distinctions are important. I'll explain why. Almost every single agency I've ever worked for they're subject to the Local Agency Public Construction Act. For some reason, hospital districts aren't. You guys are unique. Instead, you guys have your own rules under the Hospital District Act. And it says that the board has a 25,000 threshold for the force account. What that means is, looking at just public works now, a force account is when you use your own staff to build things. So that's a force account. And you can authorize your own staff to go build, but you guys don't have those kind of people. That's like the city public works situation.
I'm pretty handy.
We're really handy.
Get your hammer out.
If
I wouldn't trust it, but I'm pretty handy.
We struck them all
you can, I mean, hey, you can do it. So it's totally up to you. Force account. So that's like what that basically means is the CEO has the authority to on her own approve any type of construction project up to $25,000. Make sense? Everything above that requires board approval currently. All right, next slide. In comes the Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Act, also known as UPCA. UPCA only applies to public works types projects. The construction, the redevelopments, like if you're gonna paint something, not a maintenance project, but if you're gonna paint something, if you're gonna refloor things, if you're gonna put a new roof on, UPCA applies to those. And the reason UPCA applies to those is because it wants to create, these things are expensive. They're the most expensive types of contracts you have, generally. And when you do these contracts, you want a formal procedure that isn't too cumbersome. Because otherwise you have to rely on the default rules, which are pretty cumbersome. So under UPCA, instead of the 25,000 threshold, which currently exists under the hospital district law, every public agency can opt into UPCA and take advantage of the 75,000 threshold, meaning your CEO or whoever your executive officer is gets up to $75,000 to spend on these types of public construction projects. Between 75 and 220,000, you go through this informal bidding procedure. And then above 220,000, there's a formal bidding procedure that's like published notice. You got to wait for bids to come in. You have to open sealed bids. It's a whole thing. So what I'm proposing in the draft is aligning your existing purchasing policy with those standards under UPCA. You go to the next slide.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Informal bidding. Tell me what that is.
So informal bidding is a process where you don't have to go through the whole submitting submitting a notice, having the proposals, you can just send it out to. You have a list ahead of time that you develop of licensed contractors that you use. And you send out to that list and you receive bids and then you just choose.
Wow,
It's a shorter
that's great.
process.
Yeah.
Is a shorter process. So if you were to change this, if you were to adopt UPCA, these are two separate steps. Follow me here, because this is where it gets complex. Step one is opting into UPCA. You opt into UPCA, you get the benefits of all the things you can do in public works. A second step, if you choose to do it, is amending your purchasing policy to be this one to be consistent with UPCA. If you did this, Rachel would have $75,000 maximum to spend on goods or services. If you just opted into UPCA, Rachel will be limited under your purchasing policy to $25,000 for all public works, but could use these different processes. Already mentioned there are different types of contracts. We can go to the next slide. Public project, I kind of mentioned it already, but you guys call them under your policy, you call them district projects. Public projects are really the same thing. It's construction, reconstruction, erection, alteration, et cetera, et cetera. You get the idea. Next slide. Oh, sorry, can we go back? I just want to point this out. I mentioned that there's this class called maintenance contracts. Maintenance contracts are not public projects. So routine, recurring, and usual work for the preservation or protection of any publicly owned or publicly operated facility, landscaping, minor repair, painting, stuff like that. These are unique because they're subject to prevailing wage, but they're not subject to all these bidding requirements. Next slide. Okay. Another benefit of UPCA, not to be understated. Like I said, public works projects have onerous requirements, but if you opt into UPCA, you can avoid a lot of these bidding requirements when you use piggybacking. Piggybacking is a concept where if another agency has already done it, you can use what they've already done and use their contractor. So if they bid out the same exact work, you want to repair the roof for a building, same size roughly, and they've already noticed that and received the bid and they like the contractor, you can use that same exact contract for that service. More common when it comes to projects that are more based on like supplies and building supplies, but in any case, piggybacking. Design build projects, won't get into it, super specific. Emergencies, in a case of emergency, you don't have to go through the public bidding process. And then if you don't receive any bids, then you don't have to rebid that thing. You could just give it to whoever you want to give it to. Next slide. Okay, so just a side-by-side comparison. Your current policy requires, so like I said, it doesn't draw a distinction between these different types of contracts, right? Board approval for 10,000, formal bidding for 25,000. So CEO is limited to $10,000, and under your hospital law, you have to bid out public projects above 25,000, which is a really low threshold for public projects. Like you build something tiny in the back of this building, you're already going to exceed 25,000. That 10,000 stands, obviously this 25 doesn't apply to these because these aren't public projects. But the 10,000 for your purchasing policy does apply. So basically, Rachel's capped at 10,000 for all these different things. So if Rachel wants to hire an accountant to do like a one-off audit or something, she wants to hire an auditor, and the contract was worth $20,000, she couldn't do that on her own. She'd have to come back and get your approval. If she wants to go and hire like a one-off attorney on a labor issue that, like, let's say it's too specialized for me and I can't handle it, she couldn't do it. She'd have to come back and get your approval because that attorney's contract is probably gonna be more than 10,000, maybe it's 20 or 30,000. Supplies, equipment, she has to come to you every time she wants to spend more than 10,000. So what I'm proposing, and this is totally up for the board to decide what the appropriate threshold is, but aligning your policy with the thresholds in UPCA. Give your CEO up to 75,000. She's going to exercise her discretion when she might bring to the board contracts that are less than 75,000 if she feels it's appropriate, but she can go up to 75,000. And then for every public project, you get these bidding thresholds. And that 75 is going to apply to professional services, special services, and supplies and equipment. You can choose. You could say, Rachel, we like you to work on public project. We like you to approve public projects below 75. Or when it comes to professional services or special services, we want to lower your threshold and make it like 50,000. And we want to approve everything above 50,000. You have the ability to play with these numbers. Now that we're drawing distinctions in the new version of the policy between these different types of contracts. Next slide. So like I said, this is going to be a two-step process we're talking about today. Step one is you have to formally opt into UPCA. This is how you do it. The board has to adopt a resolution electing to opt in, which is part of your agenda packet. I drafted the resolution. Once you approve it, staff provides a copy of the resolution to the state controller. And then once the state controller has it, and you could look, there's like a whole long list of all the public agencies that are members. Your name will be added to that list. There's a few hospital districts in that list already. And then the board has to revise their purchasing policy to be consistent with UPCA's procedures. Can you go back to that? In the draft you have in your agenda packet, I've revised the purchasing policy already to be consistent with UPCA's procedures. Again, that's talking about this portion, public projects. You can always choose to mess with these thresholds at your will. We can go back this way. Next slide. Okay, that's complex. So let me know if you have questions, and I'll try to answer it using a presentation and a little whiteboard.
And if I can add on, let me give you a real world example. Building B, our education building. Remember, we've been trying to renovate the exterior bathrooms to be ADA compliant. The project is going to be more than $25,000. So I have put it out to public bid, the full onerous process, twice with 0 bidders. Because it is such a big process to bid for what is technically a small job for most general contractors. The insurance requirements, the bond requirements, all the different pieces that are built into that are great for jobs that are probably in this $220,000. So the general contractor we're looking in to come in and do maybe a $50,000, $60,000 job. It's not worth their time to go through this process for that small job. And this has been what's held up getting that job done since, when did I first do that? Last July, August?
So let me check my understanding. Professor. Well done, by the way. If we had the UPCA policy, if I understand things correctly, and it was set at the $75,000 level, Rachel would be able to do the informal bidding for that?
What's the project? What's the budget for it?
We're figuring that it'll probably be about $55,000, $60,000.
If it's $55,000, $60,000, without bidding, Rachel can just identify a contractor and say, you do it.
That's what, I'm sorry, I used the wrong term.
Yeah,
Oh, and she could also have a list of preferred and say, hey, let us know if you're
she
interested.
can do that too.
Okay, so Thank you for the real world check-in. I'm not surprised that the level is going up because construction costs are going up.
Oh, yeah.
That which we could have done at 36,000 10 years ago is now 120,000.
In fact, the 75,000 was changed this year. It used to be 60,000.
There you go. And it may even go higher. Thank you for answering my question. Colleagues, do you have questions before we go into additional discussion?
The real world, example, yeah, really cemented it for me, I can see the value of it for sure.
It's big numbers, but we got big dreams and visions here.
And we have a process and practice in place here that whenever those large expenditures come forward, they go to the appropriate committee.
I was just going to say, our other on-ramp for our public is that we have a strong culture and also an expectation, no surprises. So these kinds of things would go to probably to facilities and maybe to finance, I don't know.
Usually it goes through facilities,
Facilities.
or if it's one of the other type of contracts that's not the public works, that would typically end up falling through strategic planning
Right.
because it has something to do with a different strategic initiative.
So I'm just checking my own understanding of our internal culture. If anybody had concerns about this amount being too high, but we're kind of up against reality here.
And Chair, I'll add something as well. So when a contract is to be approved, even if Rachel has the spending authority, all contracts, the way we draft them, have to be approved as the form. So Rachel would send to me for me to review to make sure they're approved as the form. I sign approved as the form. Only then does she sign, and she has to get someone, probably Raquel, to sign off as the person that's going to attest her signature. If it requires board signatures, same deal. I'm signing off, attesting as to the form, making sure you're using the correct form. And then board chair would sign and the secretary would sign.
So 2 more checkpoint Charlies. Okay.
And imagine it would show up in your
In her-
monthly report, you know, there's.
And all contracts are public record.
Other comments or questions?
I'm delighted to see that.
Efficiency of effort. Hearing no further questions, may I have a motion to accept the Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Procedures and amending our policy FIN 09 of the Board Policies and Procedures titled Purchasing and Property Control. Thank you, Cindy. A second?
Second,
Thank you, Howard. Roll call.
Director Jeffries,
Aye.
Director Canseco,
Aye.
Director Acosta, Director DeVito, Director Song.
aye.
Thank you.
With extreme gratitude.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay, we'll try not to get stalled out like an airplane going too fast. Ooh, airplanes right now, let's not mention them. Okay, F3. I tell you, if I had any time, I would be wanting to be on LAFCO. No time. Rachel gave us the heads up that anybody on our board can throw their hat in the ring. Do we have any likely suspects?
I'm sorry, for.
This would,
F3, the LAFCO appointment nomination.
so Consolidated Redevelopment Oversight Board, they're looking for nominations, so you just rolled your eyeballs, so I'm guessing you're saying, no, you're not nominating.
Is that the same one where Sacramento, or this is different?
This is San Diego County.
San Diego County.
Yeah.
And the reason why we have an interest in their work is that they, for all public agencies, they determine sphere of influence and where we reside and where other health organizations reside in our county. And it's kind of a hot topic right now because of Palomar's situation, et cetera, et cetera.
And this one is specifically for the redevelopment oversight board, so remember redevelopment agencies were kind of dissolved and funds would be moved to different locations to sit on that board to help oversee that, but it's managed by LAFCO.
This one's kind of boring.
We will, hope our colleagues in other agencies step forward. Is that? Not hearing nobody who would like to sit on this, I am moving on.
The other pages.
Yeah, there's
That
nothing,
one.
okay.
Okay, we're having a public hearing regarding staff vacancy reporting per government code 3502.3 AB 2561.
It's on me again, Jay. So this is a new state mandate, requires every public agency to hold a public hearing annually regarding staff vacancies. It's not really an issue for special districts so much as it is for bigger agencies like counties and big cities. And the problem they're facing is a lot of these big agencies have staffing issues, tons of positions that they haven't filled. And so a lot of the unions got upset, complained to the state saying, there's a lot of stress on us because we're being asked to do a lot, and the executives of these agencies aren't filling these positions. So what we want you to do, state, is hold a hearing so we can make this public, how many staff vacancies there are. And the statute has a provision where you have to provide special notice to the union the union, which is why it's a public hearing. Just FYI, the difference between a public hearing and a discussion item is notice. So when there's a special notice requirement, it's a public hearing. When there isn't, it's a discussion item. In this case, there's a special notice requirement for the unions. This district is not, the employees aren't unionized. So it's really, unfortunately, a process we just have to go through. That doesn't really apply to Fallbrook. Nevertheless, here's the report.
I'll just briefly comment on a sister situation. Public schools and qualified teachers, for many years, there was no transparency on that. And so there's a law now where annually the districts have to report that they have highly qualified teachers, i.e. credentialed in the correct area. And it uncovered a lot of bad things that were going on in school districts. And so as much as I don't like another report, and we obviously won't be filing one.
Well, this is a report filed with the board and it's a receiving file.
Great, easy peasy for us. But as a taxpayer, I want to know why public agencies aren't filling their vacancies. And if it's to a huge degree, we should be concerned because they have tax money to pay for services to our community. So I see the benefit in it. Questions, comments?
And we have no vacancy.
And we have no vacancy. Knock, knock. So this is not an action item. It's just say we're going to do it.
Yeah, receiving file.
Receive and file. We have a term. Receive and file. I love that.
You'll see some changes to our agenda that allows us to acknowledge what action is expected, whether it's receive and adopt, receive and file.
Yes.
So that there's an indication of what needs to be done with that particular line.
I appreciate it. Okay. Okay, that concludes our open session agenda. We are now going to reconvene into closed session and bid our audience adieu. Thank you for coming.
You are, of course, welcome to hang out outside of the room when we come back into open session. You are welcome to.
Oh, thank you. One moment, please. One moment, please, public. Our closed session agenda item is public employee performance evaluation, titled Chief Executive Officer. Do any of the members of the public have a comment they want to make before we go into closed session on that topic? It's an annual thing we do. No, okay, goodbye.
What say you?
I'm gonna give board colleagues a moment to.
How many of you are gonna hang out or come back?